Okay, so for today's teardown, we have a Ford TPMS sensor. This is what basically communicates to the vehicle as to, well, your tire pressure. So you can see this one's rated up to 50 psi, and it communicates at 315 megahertz. And I'm basically trying to see if I can replace the battery in this to save a little bit of money. It'll save money if I can. So basically, it's outer shell with a semi-permeable or deformable, sort of like not a hard potting compound, sort of a stiff one. So we can already see actually there's something solid and hard there. And one of these, or maybe multiples, would be the holes for the actual PSI, well, pressure sensor. Interestingly, they have... Oh, actually, that's probably from the plastic. Yeah, I thought they had put something into the potting compound as like a indication of what it was. So I'm just going to go around the left and right sides. So yeah, if this was a hard potting compound, this would be a completely destructive process, but this is soft. And so previously I've used things like warm water to loosen up hard potting compounds, and that might help take this off in larger chunks, but I'm also worried about just damaging it, because it is, obviously sealed up against water. So this looks to be a large 3-volt lithium cell, probably primary. This battery, is a CR2450 HH. So it's not a 2032 like I was partially expecting, but it looks quite similar. Let me see here. I wonder if that is just an indication of it being slightly different or tabbed or something like that. Or it might be like a physically deeper cell. It looks pretty much the same size. Oh, you know what? This here looks like a little breather. Like it feels like sort of a cloth material, essentially. It doesn't feel like a solid plastic. So that's probably a breather, and that's what actually gets the pressure sensor reading, especially since I can see sort of a thing back there. So I do want to be careful with the rest of this process. So what I'm going to do is just use a plastic pry tool. That should be gentle enough. So there are no components on this side of the board, it seems. So it looks like the circuit board is heat staked in at these 2 points, though. So the main thing about this is I don't know if an epoxy resin will possibly soak into this compared to whatever this potting compound was made out of. Because the potting compound is likely designed to work better against a wide range of temperatures and also not go into that little porous thing. My plan was basically just to use some JB Weld plastic epoxy. It's a really fast setting one, and that would be how I seal this all in. But I need to see if this is like a deeper battery than the 2032. So we do have those 4 heat stakes on the 4 corners. Okay, so I'm going to desolder the battery terminals from this, because I think the board is free. Actually, I guess what I could do is just pry that up. Okay, there we go. So I'm already seeing something that came apart. Yeah, the top of a ferrite, I believe. So there's a plastic ring from around this, and yeah, it's a substantially thicker cell. Yeah, there we go. So you can see the size difference. So it is actually just the top section that's the same as a 2032, but then it gets a lot larger in the surrounding area. And we can see what the top came off of, that component there. And then we have our antenna. I'm curious if this metal bar actually acts as part of the antenna. That antenna might be just like a tuning component actually. So yeah, that right there is our pressure sensor. But yeah, as far as this thing coming apart, I could grab one from another wheel because I have basically a couple that are from a junkyard. Looks like this was just glued on top. It actually has some writing on it. Yes, I don't know what that is, but Might look it up later and see what it is. I can't really tell from looking at it what it would be. Yeah, so we basically just have then a bunch of passives, a little microcontroller. Some kind. Let's see if I can. Just want to get the numbers on that. Oh, there we go. 7, 5, maybe 8C, and it's a ZXP device. And then I don't know if this will be marked at all. It does have some markings. I think those are going to be substantially harder to see. It's due to the finish of the top there. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah, so I guess what I'll do is I'll see if I can find one of these batteries locally. And then this time I can probably leave this intact in here and just do the battery replacement now that I see how it goes, because I saw the blue and I thought maybe it was a molded thing that held it around, but it is just the potting compound and then a few clips that hold it in. Yeah, but aside from that, we're pretty much done. There's nothing else really interesting except for the, you know, this coil, which might be an antenna, or, you know, something for tuning, and then this bar, it would make sense to have the antenna because it's got to go through, you know, a steel wheel and over to the receivers. Yep, not really anything else to it. So yeah, I'll maybe see if I can try and get those off and put them into the description, the numbers on the pressure sensor. But yeah, it's just basically a surface mount device with a hole in the bottom that leads to, well, the pressure sensor, and then that goes through this little perforated sort of maybe compressed paper thing to get the actual reading, and that probably has a hydrophobic coating to keep the water out but let the air in. So yeah, CR2450HR, unusual. Okay, so here we have another one, another used one. And so I think these are actually date codes. I think this one, I don't know, this one, let's see. This one says 150603 on it. And then this one says, what is that? 071029. So I'm not sure if that's, you know, year, month, day, or day, year, month. I'm not sure. Either way, they're old. So I'm going to replace the battery in this one just because now I know where this, you know, the battery tabs are in relation to the sensor hole. So I can keep all of this stuff well potted while only cutting into where I need. And then I also don't risk messing up that little breather hole. So I'll first remove this. And it actually, this one does look older just based on how the stuff is discolored, and it looks like this is actually swollen up here. So So I go ahead and line that up. And what we need is all to the right of this. So this one was actually apparently working, but yeah, I didn't want to risk it. If it dies again, you know, in a few months, then it's kind of shitty. This might actually just be a different potting compound, because look at how easily that's coming off. That, or it is older and it's more brittle. But this way, I also end up using less epoxy, which is good, because A, that stuff stinks, and B, it's not free, right? So. We will desolder these old tabs. I'll put some solder on the fresh tabs, actually. And this battery ended up only being like 20 bucks to have them do the shrink wrap and the tab and for the battery itself, so that's quite reasonable, I think. Okay, so that's the old battery out. And the new one will just sort of slip in. Okay, and so now the next step is the potting compound. Okay, so we have our sensor and a little something for spills. And our 5-minute epoxy. Now this stuff does stink super bad, so you do want to get it outside. And I'm just cleaning up just around the edges, that way the JB weld has somewhere to get down into. Okay. Okay, so let's... Oh, Jesus. I do see liquid epoxy in here still, so should still be good if I can get it out of here. This stuff does smell pretty bad, so you want to do it somewhere well ventilated or get it outside quickly. Oh shit. And one side of it is blocked. Alright. Oh, that side of it has like turned into a gel for some reason. Shit. leveling out more than I was expecting it to. So now we'll just leave it and see. And then this stuff, I don't know if I can get the cap back on. It must have had some of the yellow stuff leak over into the white stuff. Okay, yeah, I can't get this cap back on at all. So I'll just seal that up in a bag and we'll come back in a few minutes and see if this stuff is set. Realized I forgot to do it, but it was probably good to let it tacken up a little bit or get slightly harder. There were a couple air bubbles coming up from here, so I poked just a little more from here into that spot where it was bubbling up, sort of poked down, and then I put this band back in place. And it is in fact thickening up now. So I think this stuff is, you know, probably not amazing, like 100%, but it probably is still better than nothing. Yeah, it was flowing much more liquidy before. Oh god. And so just flattening those couple sections off, and then I will. Now this had a crack on it, so closed it up a little bit. So yeah, I'll wash my hands and we'll come back to this in a few more minutes, and then should be set and then cure in an hour. So interesting side note, yeah, this is actually getting like surprisingly hot when it's setting. Like it makes sense that it's an exothermic reaction to harden. But yeah, that's like good, like 35, 40 degrees. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. But yeah, it's coming up quite nicely. So I don't think we'll have a problem with this. So I'll probably just end the video here, actually, yeah. I mean, that's setting nice and strong in here. Actually, yeah, that's... Yeah, so that's pretty good. So yeah, it's pretty much going to be done sitting here in a few minutes. But yeah, so there we have an original TPMS sensor that has been refurbished with a new battery, and provided there isn't something stupid like the programming on this being wiped and it stops working completely, it should be all set. But yeah, that shouldn't, I really doubt that it would do that. So yeah, that's, there you have it, and you have a neat little two-tone division between where we poked in and where we didn't have to. So yeah, I don't know, maybe this is something they do in countries that don't have easy access to these parts. Maybe in, you know, places that are worse off. I wouldn't say third world countries, because then they wouldn't give a shit about TPMS sensors, but I wonder if there is any sort of like a TPMS refurbishing thing that some places offer just to reduce the cost. Because yeah, $20 in parts, a bit of epoxy, but you could do easily 4 of them with a whole tube, probably 8. Maybe even more, I don't know. I didn't really use up much of all of what I made, so yeah, that might be, I don't know, something people do in, as an option, aside from, you know, spending $75 on an aftermarket sensor, or probably fucking like $200 on one of these new ones. So yeah, there we have a process on how to refurbish a TPMS sensor, and also a full teardown.